World-changing socioeconomic impacts of the biggest retailer on the planet. Whether you're a total retail economics nerd or just kind of curious about the hidden mechanisms behind everyday commerce, this breakdown is going to give us a really clear, structured look at how a single business model historically reshaped our modern world.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. A historic retail rise. 2. Subsidizing the workforce. 3. Suppliers and global impact. 4. Hollowing out small towns. And finally, number 5. The dynasty's historic cost. Let's get into it. Section 1. A historic retail rise. Tracing the Walton equation.
The source maps out this absolutely wild historic trajectory. It all starts back in 1962 when founder Sam Walton operated on this one very simple belief, that Americans would gladly drive past 3 local stores just to save, 17 cents on a tube of toothpaste. And man, did that single relentless focus compound over the decades. By 1970, the company went public, jumped to 1990, and they completely dominated the U.S. market. By 2002, well, that 17-cent philosophy had literally built the largest company on earth.
And the financial result of that historic rise? It is staggering. Today, the Walton family's combined net worth hovers right around $250 billion. Just to put that into perspective, that is actually more wealth than the GDP of 150 different countries. But the core argument of the source here is that this mountain of wealth wasn't just amassed by, say, inventing a better product. No, they argue it was built by perfecting a system that pushes the actual costs outward onto society.
Section 2. Subsidizing the workforce. The cost of low wages.
So the source gives us this really stark juxtaposition. Back in 2023, the company celebrated bumping their starting wage up to $14 an hour. Sounds okay at first, right? But contrast that with the reality on the ground in Bentonville, Arkansas, which is the company's own hometown. According to the data, a single adult there needs roughly $17 an hour just to afford a modest one-bedroom apartment without completely drowning in rent. And in coastal states, the author points out that this gap becomes an absolute chasm. Which brings us to a crucial question. What actually happens when full-time workers simply can't afford to live? Well, according to data cited from a 2013 House Committee report, the American taxpayer steps in. This massive wage gap means that we, the taxpayers, subsidize this retailer's labor costs by an astonishing $6.2 billion every single year. We're talking food stamps, Medicaid, housing assistance, and the source argues pretty emphatically that this isn't some accident or glitch. It's the business model working exactly as it was designed to.
And the contrast gets even sharper, because in the exact same year that taxpayers were absorbing that $6.2 billion burden, the text points out that the Walton family paid themselves roughly $3 billion in dividends. The critique from the author here is, well, it's pretty sharp. They argue the family didn't build the public safety net, but they certainly heavily profit from its necessity.
The text also tracks this really historic pattern of labor friction through some major wage theft settlements. We're looking at $50 million in Colorado back in 2000, all the way to a massive $640 million federal and state settlement in 2008. The author's point is that when you see historic settlements of this sheer magnitude, you aren't just looking at a few bad managers. You're looking at a system deliberately engineered to extract maximum labor for minimum cost.
Section 3. Suppliers and global impact, the broader footprint.
Now, the author poses a pretty vital question here. Does this historic model of relentless cost-cutting stop at the store level? The resounding answer in the text is absolutely not. That exact same intense pressure placed on domestic cashiers, it gets applied directly to their global supply chains. See, suppliers are locked into this vendor scorecard that literally demands a 5% price cut every single year. To make that impossible math work, production constantly has to chase the absolute cheapest labor markets on Earth, moving from Bangladesh to Vietnam to Ethiopia. Tragically, the text argues this pressure cooker culminated in events like the horrific 2013 Rana Plaza collapse in Bangladesh, where 1,134 garment workers were killed. And the text notes, with heavy criticism, that orders from the retailer had continued flowing in despite 2 failed factory safety audits. But the global impact isn't just human, is it? It's heavily environmental too. Despite all those heavily marketed corporate sustainability pledges, a 2022 report cited in the text claims the reality is, well, quite different. Because of this massive reliance on global shipping and disposable goods, the company's actual greenhouse gas emissions were nearly 8 times higher than what they officially reported once you actually account for that full hidden supply chain.
Section 4. Hollowing out small towns, the expansion playbook.
Here, the explainer maps out what the author describes as a highly predatory expansion strategy used heavily during the 1980s and 90s. It's basically a four-step historic playbook. Step 1, enter a rural county. Step 2, operate at a total loss just to undercut local generations-old businesses. Step 3, simply wait the 3 to 5 years it usually takes for the historic downtown to completely collapse. And then Step 4, once you've entirely captured the market, quietly raise those prices right back up.
To put a hard number on the devastation of that playbook, the source points to a 2006 study from UC Irvine. They found that every single new store destroyed approximately 150 retail jobs per county. And the author really emphasizes the word destroyed here. These jobs weren't just seamlessly transferred. Workers who lost their livelihoods at, say, a family-owned hardware store often ended up having to work at the new megastore, but for lower pay and fewer benefits.
Section 5. The dynasty's historic cost, philanthropy, and reality.
The author draws a really stark contrast for us here. On one side, you've got the wholesome, historic values promoted in Sam Walton's own autobiography. You know, claiming that outstanding leaders go out of their way to boost the self-esteem of their personnel. But on the other side, the author presents a pretty unforgiving modern reality. A reality where, reportedly, an heir can walk away from drunk driving incidents with just a fine, while a desperate store employee faces permanent unemployment and a felony charge for stealing a $5 sandwich just to feed their kids.
And then there's the philanthropy. The Walton family gives away roughly $500 million annually. Now I know that sounds like an enormous amount of money, but the text argues that when you actually do the math, it represents just 0.2% of their total wealth. The author doesn't mince words, bluntly calling this a tax deduction wrapped in a press release and noting that it represents less than 2 weeks of their dividend income. Kind of puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Even when looking at recent, positive PR moments, the source really asks us to look closer. Like in 2018, they raised the minimum wage to $11. Great, but that still left a family of 4 below the poverty line. In that exact same year, the family received $2.8 billion in stock buybacks, and thousands of human store-level managers were suddenly laid off, replaced by algorithms. All the while, the source points out, millions are being spent lobbying against the very things that would actually help their workforce. Things like paid sick leave, unions, and broader minimum wage hikes.
Which brings us to a deeply provocative, concluding question from the author. Looking at this historic retail machine, we really have to ask ourselves, is the lowest price truly a bargain, or is society simply absorbing the hidden cost? The source leaves us wondering if, in our relentless pursuit of cheap goods, we have tragically mistaken poverty for a bargain. It's a powerful framework to view the evolution of modern retail, and one that absolutely makes you rethink the true historic price tag of everyday low prices.